Hi. Back, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We're continuing our conversation on arts and culture and their contribution towards building a better Africa and a better world. And we had a couple of questions that came through just before the break, and I'm going to ask my panelists just to address them as they feel. Let me start with you, Minister.
Firstly, we need to acknowledge that arts, culture, and heritage is a very powerful tool in the hands of humanity. And everybody must realize that. And if that's the case, therefore, the empowerment and development of the practitioners in there is paramount. Transformation, therefore, comes as part of that journey, because if we don't cover that journey, as nations, we'll just fall. Two, the issue of heritage, what you need is 90%. It's 90%. In fact, even 100% to everything. You know, the breaking of the ground is this is what people always say. You have good policies as government. Where we're found lacking is on the implementers and implementation. So we need implementers who listen, like SABC is listening under COO Mthethwa. We need that. People are not going to understand, have respect of themselves if they don't know themselves and they don't know who they are. And that is why a typical South African would know about Adolf Hitler or Mussolini more than Jomo Kenyatta, because the history people are taught is that one of inferior. That when in the Eastern Frontier Wars, those wars broke out, you were told Amaxhosa were defeated and fled. And if the same thing happens in Isandlwana, we are told, no, Chelmsford army retreated strategically. And this is what makes people believe that you cannot do anything. So therefore, it's because of that we are at an advanced stage with the Department of Education to make history, our history, compulsory in schools, so that our people understand who they are. They will question us when we say, you must be proud of who you are, you must be an African and so on, because they see everything but African. On radio, they listen music outside of the continent, on television and print media and so on. So we are changing the game by emphasizing that if we have those who are running, Minister Mthambi, Minister Mthethwa, and everybody else, all of us, our officials should just run and implement the program. And things are going to change. One day you wake up, 90% is there.
Okay. Deputy Minister?
Yes, actually. That's what the minister is saying, that to strengthen that at schools we're running the program of your totem. And in order that they understand, we've got a program that we call oral history. Oral history, they go and find out who they are, where they come from. We were very impressed with one of the little girls last year who said, I went to libraries, to museums to find out about my family, for instance, say Mazivukos. And as she was tracing that lineage, she found that they came from Kenya and ended up in KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah.
You see, they become interested in finding out about who they are. That oral history really builds them. So we encourage them. That's one of our programs that we are running. We encourage them to go to the older people to find out. Then they start loving the indigenous way of living, the indigenous food, the indigenous everything that we mustn't lose. Said, for instance, I was made to fail because I couldn't remember when Jan van Riebeeck came to this country.
Yeah.
And yet not knowing yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, so we try by all means that we
Okay,
do.
a quick comment from you, Mfundo?
I think there was one question that came about teaching young people to truly appreciate Africa for what it is. And I think that in essence, we need to start teaching the history of Africa, not really as, Africans have always been defeated, but that essentially we have been victorious. And that as we continually progress, because Africa, I think, is one of the fastest growing continents. We have 10 of the fastest growing countries in the world. And that is the angle we need to start teaching young Africans, not really of the fact that we sort of have these challenges. Sure, we need to admit that we still have challenges as Africa, but we need to start teaching about where we want to go, most importantly as Africans. Because I think, Minister, you've constantly iterated the fact that we, as young Africans who are now being constantly educated, we're not just being educated because we want to be bookworms, but we essentially want to develop this young continent.
All right. I'm going to move back to my floor just now, but Professor Sonyika, Ankabat Al-Bakir says that the plot is lost by focusing on being African. Universal Ubuntu is about being human. Are we focusing on the wrong thing, trying to concentrate on this whole African story rather than the human story?
Well, the question of emphasis, really, this is emphasis. I'm sure that I've said the same thing the other way around at other times, depending on what the topic, the context, and so on is. What I would like to do really is to go back just a little bit and take up the question of artistic transmission, because I think it's very easy to get too stuck with the issue of language. It's a question of transmission, crossing boundaries with creativity, and that happens not just in the literary arts, but in design, even in architecture, in music, for instance, in the painterly arts, in theater, theater in any language. And a lot of this, I think, can assist the continent in arriving at that same goal of unity, at least cultural unity, not cultural monothematic, but just the idea that all the cultures are exchangeable within the African continent. Even the issue of prizes, and I even have a beef with South Africa about that, because they come to Nigeria, their writers come to compete in Nigeria, and they carry off all the prizes. In fact, a literary prize 2 years ago was carried off by a medical person, a doctor. And I keep telling our people, these South Africans, you better watch them. They are taking away everything. But I spoke earlier of a community, just the very prospect for young artists and young cultural warriors, the very prospect of a young lady standing up in Lagos with colleagues and speaking to them in her own cultural voice and making accessible the work of the imagination, which is based in the material reality of her own country. That, for me, is already half the battle. And of course, we have facilities, structures like translation, so that even if people use their own language in a literary way, it's made accessible across through other languages. So it's not a bleak picture. That's what I'm really trying to say. And it goes all the way back even to pre-colonial times. I remember the impact that a painter like Malangatana from Mozambique, was it Mozambique or Angola, made on us at the time when we encountered his interpretation and expression of that yet colonized society. The impact it made, the enthusiasm of wanting to know more about this society, over and beyond even the ability to understand each other's language. So I don't want us to diminish the non-literary arts. They're very, very critical.
On and Africanism. It's not mutually exclusive. Our identity is an identity, as we are here, of a South African, but also an African. And beyond that, a citizen of the world. What it means is that within the community of nations, you have a name. You are somebody who's part of humanity. It can't be mutually exclusive.
Professor Omotoso, with the way the world has moved, we're becoming global citizens now. And so are we not in danger of living in the past and not embracing the world that we're living in? The one thing that we do have in common is that we're all human beings. That we know for certain. Everything else comes with its history and its culture. Are we not in danger, as we're trying to build the continent, of holding too much to the past instead of focusing on this is the world that we live in now and this is what we need to prepare for going forward?
In the first place, the present world that we talk about of the West is not healthy. I mean, there are problems. They have problems. And if we get too involved in solving their problem, solving the problems of capitalism, solving the problems of, they're encountering, the kind of social problems they have, we possibly will get lost with them. So we need to anchor ourselves to our history, to our struggles. And those struggles, although they might end up in defeat in one place, in fact, the issue is that Africa has used defeat to survive. We have survived. And there are many natives who have not survived. We have to remember that all the time. Our humanity is that we have been able to use these defeats and turn them on their heads and begin to go back, to remold ourselves. But in remolding ourselves, we don't only need our own history, our own culture, our own background. We also need what other people have, which is part of the heritage of humanity, so we can call on it. I don't think we get lost by simply calling on our past. We need all of this to be able to shape where we're going to and what they're going to take over.
Okay, Simphiwe, I'm going to come to you in a short while. Let's go to, and it's nice to have Joma Fellow with us today. Table number 2.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Minister of Arts and Culture and your deputy, Sonyika, Omotoso, and everybody on the panel. My question is to Sonyika and the minister. When are we going to have an encyclopedia of Africa, giving the whole evolution of our nation? The last time I read anything about Africa was from Time and Life magazine in 1961. And that was the end of it. I mean, OAU was created and everything was created. I mean, as it is, you want to pursue that, our schools to teach history. But we have got a lot of empires which has gone in the years in our whole evolution up to today. Number 2 is that we don't have a village whereby we can say, here is a village which shows all the cultures, our heritage and everything. When are we going to have that? What are we going to leave for our new generation? If we're going to go in bits and pieces, saying you're going to teach Venda, you're going to teach Zulu, you're going to teach Xhosa, but what about the whole of Africa? What about the whole of Africa? We're sitting here enjoying ourselves. We don't know the music of all over Africa. No, we don't. We don't have a Boma whereby, like in Kenya, they have a boma, whereby you go there, you find out all the dances of Kenya, right? You don't have it any other place. I was going to pursue our minister to have a boma also in South Africa, whereby we can display our heritage, our music and dance. Thank you.
Okay, so very powerful question. We don't know each other as Africans, essentially. That's what he's kind of saying. But please park that. I'm going to get a few more questions, and if you could comment on that. Tebogo Twin, table 18. Oh, have we taken a break? All right, okay. Tebogo. Let me just take a quick break, and then we'll come to you right after this. Stay with us.